Friend trashed my home and added 1,100 miles on my leased car while I was recovering from surgery in the hospital. I had to spend a month away from home for a major surgery and the long, difficult recovery that followed. This wasn't just any medical procedure, I'm talking about something so intense that, now, 6 weeks later, I still can barely walk. With everything going on, I barely had time to breathe when my pet sitter bailed at the last second. Desperate, I reached out to a friend who was struggling to find a place to stay, hoping it could be a win-win. I gave her some money, let her live in my house, and made sure she wouldn't go hungry by stocking up with $300 worth of groceries. All I needed from her was to look after my kittens and fish, keep the house tidy for my return, and only use my car in an absolute emergency. Since my car is a lease, every mile counts and I have to stay within my limit or pay a ridiculous fee. She agreed to everything, or so I thought. As soon as I was in the hospital, she moved her own cat in. Then her boyfriend showed up. I started getting a bad feeling, but I was in no condition to do anything about it. When I dragged myself back home, battered and barely able to walk, the scene waiting for me was worse than my worst nightmare. The kitchen sink was overflowing with dishes. It took me 4 separate loads to clear it all out. Dirty plates and half-eaten food littered every room. Cat vomit dried into the carpets, mounds of bagged cat litter blocking the hallway, trash bags abandoned right at the front door. My once clean couch was stained, the floors and counters caked in grime. Fireplace ash was spread in a huge 3-foot circle around the hearth and, to top it all off, they burned through about 80% of my winter firewood. Now, there wasn't nearly enough left to get me through the winter. There I was, freshly post-surgery and stumbling through pain, forced to scrub floors, lug trash, scrub, sweep, mop, doing everything I physically could, even though every step sent waves of pain through me. Each night since I got home, pain washed over me from doing too much too soon. And the worst part? I couldn't even get rid of them right away. She tried to talk her way into staying for weeks longer, claiming she wanted to help with the kids and take care of you. Absolutely not, but I was so exhausted and weak that I had to handle it delicately. In the end, I was stuck with her and her deadbeat boyfriend for 2 more miserable days. He lounged on my couch, eating my food and watching me clean up the disaster they'd left, never once offering to help. At least she cooked for me the next day, but it felt like too little, too late. I finally called my 2 closest friends, a married couple, and begged them to come over and make sure those leeches left when the lift called arrived. I told my unwanted guests to be packed and ready to go hours in advance, but they only began frantically grabbing their things 10 minutes before the car showed up. The Lyft driver had to wait for half an hour while they dithered. As they were leaving, the boyfriend kept grilling my friend about how long they'd be staying, acting like they were doing me a favor by sticking around. He even claimed he wanted to come back to help me. He hadn't lifted a finger for anything but making my life harder. As soon as their backs were turned, my real friends shooed me straight into bed and rolled up their sleeves, tackling the kitchen and living room mess. My kids pitched in too. Even then, I still found myself cleaning for several days just to restore some normalcy. The stains on the couch are still there. I haven't managed to attempt those yet, but at least my son vacuumed the crumbs out and cleaned the mess at the fireplace. Just when I thought things couldn't get much worse, I checked my car. I'd only allowed her to use it for 2 city trips, about 30 miles away. She sheepishly admitted to using it a little bit while I was gone, but I was too drained to argue. Then I actually checked the mileage. She and her boyfriend had put over 1,100 miles on my car. They had totally taken advantage of me while I was at my lowest. Today, I finally found my backbone and sent them a message demanding payment, 30 cents for every unauthorized mile, totaling $255. Either I recover a bit of the money they cost me, or I scare them into disappearing from my life forever. Whichever way it goes, I count that as a victory. Update 1. I didn't expect things to escalate so quickly. Honestly, I didn't expect anything to change at all. Maybe that makes me naive, sometimes I think so too, but I've always tried to see the best in people, hoping they'll choose to do the right thing. It's time I use some real names. The woman in this story called herself Raven. I still don't know if that's her actual name, but that's who she became to me. Her boyfriend is Angelo. The cat, a total sweetheart, is Alvin. A bit of context for where I'm coming from. I grew up in an abusive household, the sort where every day was about maintaining a perfect image at all costs. I learned early that if anyone did me harm, insulted me, hurt me, belittled me, it was my job to apologize to them. My father was a ticking time bomb, sometimes perfectly fine, sometimes terrifyingly violent. When I was 18, he physically attacked me. I escaped into the army, spent 4 years abroad, even ended up in a war, and came home with PTSD. Over the years, my father didn't let up much. He only assaulted me a handful of times since then, the latest was last June. Before that, last February, he left bruises on my arms. And I married someone who turned out to be just as emotionally unavailable, eventually a serial cheater who blamed all their affairs on me. For years, I accepted that blame. I twisted myself in knots to try to be good enough, so they'd finally stop cheating. I finally filed for divorce at the end of 2024. When I asked my mother for support, she took my ex's side, dismissing the affairs and insisting I cancel the divorce and plead for my ex to come back, for the sake of the kids. It took intense therapy this past year for me to finally see, none of it was my fault. I spent years trying to explain my hurt to them, but they never listened. I'm not to blame for the abuse I've suffered. I am, though, in control of my own healing now. Fault looks back, but responsibility looks forward. I try to learn from the past, but I keep my eyes on what's next. Now, I've been estranged from my parents for 3 months. My mom refuses to respect any boundary, still trying to find ways to get through, even showing up at my house unannounced. My dad, meanwhile, badmouths me to anyone who'll listen. He battered my ex and threatened to sue both of us for grandparents' rights. As soon as my divorce is finalized, my first call will be to a lawyer about a restraining order against my own parents. Everything in my life explains why things with Raven became so difficult, and why kicking her out was almost impossible, for me. Boundary setting has never come easily, and thanks to major surgery, my body was too weak to put up much of a fight. I am beyond grateful for my 2 best friends, who literally showed up and enforced everything on my behalf. Looking back to last weekend, I had just come home from surgery on Friday. It took until Sunday, with a ton of support from those friends, to finally get Raven and Angelo out of my house. Even then, they didn't leave empty-handed. Some clothes, Raven's prescription meds, the cat, and more were left behind. I realize now this was probably a tactic to give them an excuse to come back, though I wasn't thinking that way at the time. The entire week was a mess of caring for my kids while trying to reclaim my house, little by little. Once custody exchange day finally arrived, I could breathe. With the kids gone for a bit, I could focus on recovery, or at least, that was the plan. But of course, life had other things planned. The day I exhausted my pain meds was also the day my doctors were all out of reach. The surgeon wasn't available, my PCP was gone, my gynecologist never called back. Eventually, I gave up and spent 7 hours in the ER, desperate for relief. The staff there were wonderful, but I didn't make it home till after 9 p.m. At 11:45 p.m., just as I was settling in, my phone buzzed with a local number I didn't recognize. I answered, groggy and spent. It was Raven. She was sobbing, saying she was terrified. The house where she'd ended up was a meth house. The people were trying to kill each other. She was frightened for her life, and I was the only person she could turn to. She begged me to come get her. I told her flat out, I can't. I really can't come, can't drive, can't be around the kind of danger in my current state after surgery and on painkillers, and I couldn't bring her back to my home. I said I needed my home for me, for my own safety and recovery. Her tone shifted instantly. The crying was gone in a second, her voice steadied, and she said, fine. I get it. I'll figure it out. It's not your problem. She hung up. I don't remember every word that followed, my painkillers made everything a little hazy. I do remember that she texted, though. She wrote, I'm sorry I asked. And also you can tell me, are we not friends anymore, did I do something really bad? I replied, call 911. You're in danger and so is everyone around you. Get the police to arrest them and get you to safety. She answered, I already did. Good, I said. It didn't end. She texted again, I don't know what to do anymore. The cops are here but they won't help. It looks like the cops left doing nothing in the process. I'm sorry. It's okay, I'll figure out something. I drafted a long message, angry, direct, telling her she had to work things out on her own, that I was not her rescuer. I reminded her how much she'd already taken from me, how her and Angelo's presence had wrecked my house, how cleaning up after them had torn my stitches. I told her Angelo terrified me, that I was pretty sure he was an addict, and that for the time being, she wasn't welcome near me or my home. If she showed up, I'd call the cops, I wrote. Alvin the cat would be cared for until she could make better choices. But I didn't send that message. Maybe the advice I'd received helped, maybe I wanted to finally enforce a real boundary. I rewrote my response, carefully, to be firm but compassionate. I'm really sorry you're in a frightening situation. I'm not able to help beyond encouraging you to work with emergency services and local resources. I need to be clear that I cannot be your rescuer, and I cannot take on crisis support, transportation, or housing. I'm recovering from surgery and need. After everything that happened, I had to set a clear boundary with Raven. I told her, I need to focus on my health and my children. Due to what happened during your stay, including the state you left my home in and the negative impact it had on my recovery, you and Angelo are no longer welcome in my home. This boundary is non-negotiable. If you show up here, I will call the police. Alvin will be cared for. I wish you nothing but safety, but I can't be involved beyond this. Raven texted back almost immediately, so the stuff I left I can't get back? Not even my cat? With a little help from AI to keep things civil, I replied, please send me a list of the personal items you want returned and an address where they can be shipped. I'm not able to arrange in-person pickup. As for Alvin, I'll coordinate a drop-off at a vet or shelter and you can retrieve him from there. If you have a preferred vet, let me know. Otherwise, I'll pick one. Raven pleaded, the stuff I don't care about, can you please just drop my cat off so I can get him? And I'm sorry that I didn't take care of the house well enough, just please don't throw my cat away. Can you just drop him off at, local vet, like on Monday? Whatever time, I'll be there, just don't take my cat away from me. And that was that. I spent the rest of the night terrified they'd show up at my house anyway. My PTSD from the army came roaring back, making me paranoid that someone would attack or harm me. Any kind of conflict spirals me into panic. I imagine every awful scenario over and over. Thankfully, my anxiety meds take the edge off. I made sure every door and window was locked tight. Finally, exhausted, I managed to fall asleep around 1 a.m., but I was up by 5, unrested and still on edge. On Monday, I plan to ask a friend to come with me when I drop Alvin off at the vet. After I leave, I'll let Raven know she can pick him up. If she doesn't, well, that's no longer my concern. For now, I have some different friends coming over tonight to cook me dinner and help tackle the mess left behind. They're also going to help me finally change the locks, something I definitely need to do. I hope this is the end of all the chaos. I just want the chance to recover in peace. To answer a few things that my friends and family are still asking me, yes, I have cameras. Yes, I'm changing the locks, but I haven't managed to do it yet. I didn't even get home from the emergency room last night until 9 p.m., and I just don't have the energy to keep running errands. It took everything I had just getting to the grocery store this morning. Tonight, my friends are coming. Finally, maybe I'll get a break and some real rest. Update 2. The locks are changed. My friends showed up with soup and a cordless drill, and while one of them sautéed onions and made my whole house smell like a home again, the other pulled the old deadbolt off and installed a new one with a keypad so I don't have to fumble with keys when I'm shaky. We moved the couch to clean under it and there it was, my spare car fob. Wrapped in a sock. I hadn't even realized it was missing until I saw it, and my stomach did that hot-cold drop. It wasn't in the key bowl where I always keep it. It was tucked under the cushion exactly where someone would reach for it if they came back to let themselves in and take my car again. We finished the lock and I taped a note to the inside of my door with my boundary and writing for myself, like a little promise to future me: if you show up here, I will call the police. Then I slept for 3 full hours in a row for the first time in weeks. When I woke up, the keypad clicked under my fingers and I cried. Not the hysterical kind. The kind that feels like exhaling. I didn't get to enjoy it long. The camera on the side gate pinged at 2:38 a.m. Angelo. Hoodie up, hands in his pockets, walking the fence line like he was deciding where to climb. He tried the backslider, rattled it once, then twice, hard enough to make the stick in the track vibrate. I hit the siren on the app and my coyote light tripped on the yard, red LEDs pulsing like a cheap nightclub. He flinched and put both hands up like that would make it okay, muttered something to himself, then walked to the front porch and cupped his hands against the glass. My chest did that tight thing like deployment all over again. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped my phone, but I dialed 911 anyway. My address came out in pieces. The dispatcher was calm. Officers pulled up not even 5 minutes later, 2 quiet cars, no lights, the kind of arrival that says, "This is routine, we've got you." They found him by the gate and told him, twice, to sit down. He argued. He said he was checking on a friend. He told them I owed him for caregiving. I didn't leave my bedroom. I watched the whole thing on my phone, stubborn tears burning my eyes because I hate being afraid in my own house. The officer asked me through the door if I wanted a trespass notice on him. Yes, I did. They wrote it on a clipboard right on my porch. He called me a name on his way off the property. The officer just said, "Don't come back," and the night folded back in on itself. I pulled the covers over my head and didn't sleep until it got light. I took Alvin to the vet in the morning with my friend. He meowed his offended little meow the whole drive and pressed his paw pads into the carrier door like he could pry it open with pure will. At intake, I gave the staff Raven's number, my own, and told them clearly, "Do not release to Angelo under any circumstances." They scanned Alvin's chip and wrote a note in his file. The tech looked me dead in the eye, that no nonsense, I've seen it all vet tech look, and said, "We've got him, you go home and rest." I paid for 2 days of boarding and a flea bath, because I could and because he deserves soft things. Raven called while I was still in the parking lot. The number popped up and for a second my thumb hovered over decline, but I answered. She was breathless, a little too bright. "I'm 5 minutes away. Just hand him to me there, okay?" "No." I told her he was safe at the vet and she could pick him up with ID. Her voice dropped an octave and went flat. "You're really going to make me go inside?" "Yes." She hung up on me. The vet called me 2 hours later. Raven came, shaking, with a backpack and a crumpled piece of mail as an ID. They let her have Alvin after she paid the boarding fee back to me in cash at the desk. She tried to talk to the receptionist about getting my address so she could return the key. The receptionist told her to call the police if she had found stolen property. I laughed, and then I cried, because sometimes humor and grief sit right next to each other and elbow each other in the ribs. The same afternoon, a ticket hit my mailbox from a toll road 2 states away, time-stamped right smack in the middle of the week I was in the hospital. There was a photo of my license plate and a grainy shot of Angelo's elbow hanging out my driver's side window. It felt like proof in a way the odometer never would. I filed an online police report for unauthorized use of a vehicle and attached the toll notice, the mileage photos from before and after, and a few clips from my camera. It was not dramatic. It was boring and bureaucratic. It was also the first time I clicked submit on anything like that and did not immediately feel like I needed to apologize. Raven texted after that. "You're really gonna call the cops on me over a few miles?" The audacity would have been funny if my stomach weren't still tender. I wrote back, "I'm pursuing the cost of the unauthorized miles and cleaning. You have my shipping address for any personal items you want returned. Do not come to my house." She replied, "Fine. Then I'll just come with the cops to get my stuff." I told her to send a list and that I'd set a civil standby appointment at a safe time with an officer present. Silence. I went through the footage from while I was gone because the toll notice cracked something open and I needed to know. There were people in my living room I've never seen in my life. A night where Angelo dragged 3 logs at a time in from my woodpile, shouting that it was the good stuff, and some stranger helped him and left with a trunk full. You can hear Raven laughing, then coughing in that way that isn't smoke, not fireplace smoke anyway. There's a clip of them backing my car down the driveway at 3:12 a.m., headlights off. I saved them all to a folder with a bland name and sent a few to my 2 best friends with a single word: evidence. A neighbor brought me a bundle of seasoned oak from his shed when he saw the empty space by my fence. He left it on my porch with a post-it, for the cold nights. Another friend showed up with a Mr. Clean magic eraser and got the fireplace ash out of the grout like it never happened. My son found my missing debit card wedged behind the microwave, the strip blistered from heat. I canceled it anyway. Hot rage rose up in me and then fell away just as fast. I don't want my life to be a defense against other people. I want to sit on my couch and drink tea and not watch the front camera like a hawk. That night, the cops called back with the incident number for the trespass and told me if either of them steps foot on my property again, it's an arrest. The officer asked me if I wanted to talk to someone about a protective order. I said I do, but not right this minute. He said he'd note it. Procedural, matter of fact, strangely soothing. I took a photo of the sticky note with the case number on it and tucked it into my nightstand. This morning my leasing company answered my email about the mileage. The rep gave me the exact overage rate, higher than I thought, and told me I could estimate the charge based on the odometer. I adjusted my invoice to Raven accordingly and sent it with a deadline and my Venmo. Angelo texted me from a different number 2 minutes later: "You're a snake." I blocked that number. When I checked the camera feed around lunch, there was a small bouquet in a jar on my porch and a paper bag with a pack of tea and a single, perfectly ripe peach. No note. Just a kindness dropped into the space where the fear had been. I don't know if they'll pay. I don't know if I'll see them again. I do know that Alvin is not my responsibility anymore, that my doors hold, that the siren works, that my friends can make beef stew that tastes like home and that I can call the police without apologizing for the inconvenience. I'm writing this with my leg propped up on a pillow, my pain under control, the room warm from a fire that I built with what I can afford to use. Every few minutes, my phone buzzes with some new administrative thing: an email from small claims court, a notice from my bank confirming the canceled card, a reply from the vet asking if I want to schedule Alvin's follow-up. I smiled. No, thank you. He's safe. I'm safer. That's enough for today. Update 3. My phone made a sound I've never heard before, this sharp little digital chirp that went straight through my ribs. AirTag found moving with you. I was barefoot in the kitchen making toast I probably wasn't going to eat. The Find My screen did that pulsing radar circle, like a heartbeat, and I could feel my own pick up with it. The dot settled on my driveway. I slipped my Crocs on and hobbled down the steps, the cold coming up through the rubber like a threat. I could hear it faintly when I opened the car door, an insecty ping from somewhere low. I couldn't fold myself under the seat, not with stitches that still argue with me when I tie my shoes, so I called my son. He slid the driver's seat all the way back and reached with those long teenager arms, pulled up the floor mat, felt around. His fingers came up with a silver disc wrapped in blue painter's tape and a long dark hair stuck to it like punctuation. I sat on the curb with my leg out straight and watched my breath ghost in the air. I dialed 911. My address came out smoother this time. The same kind of quiet patrol car as last time. The officer bagged the tag with gloved hands and read the serial number out loud while his partner wrote it down on his palm and then on the form, the careful way people do when they want to get something right. He asked me if anyone had access to my car. I told him. He blew air out through his nose like he'd expected that answer. He offered me the words protective order like he was placing a tool on the counter. I took them. He stood at my dining table and helped me fill out the packet, box by box, line by line, while my kettle clicked off and back on and off again because I kept forgetting I'd already pressed it. He took pictures of the AirTag, the painter's tape, the floor mat, the sock we'd found the spare key in last night as context. "Good job on the locks," he said, and it landed in me like a small medal. I slid my ID across the table and my hand shook so hard it made a little sound. He didn't make me feel ridiculous. He called the on-call judge from my living room. It turns out there's a whole universe of people who sit at desks at odd hours so women like me can stop being afraid at their own kitchen sinks. He read the affidavit over the phone, low and steady, and I stood there with both palms pressed flat on the cool butcher block because that was the only way I could keep from pacing. The judge approved a temporary order for me and my address and my car. It felt like checking a door and feeling it actually latch. The same friend who watched me hand Alvin over at the vet drove me to the courthouse at lunch so I could sign in person. The clerk slid the stamped copies back through the glass and said, "Sheriff will attempt service." Her nails were painted a cheerful neon green that clashed with the fluorescent lights. I loved her for it. By the time we got home, there was a voicemail from a deputy. Raven had been served at an address across town. Angelo wasn't there. They'd keep looking. The deputy said it the way he might say they'd keep looking for a lost dog. Simple, factual, intent threaded through every syllable. For the civil standby, I put every scrap of her in 2 trash bags with names on post-its and set them by the front door, inside, because the wind was up and my porch likes to swallow things whole. I added the prescription I'd found wedged behind the couch leg, an actual apology from the universe for once, and a single hoop earring I'd tried on my own ear for a second out of pure curiosity before I dropped it in the bag. The officer arrived right on the dot of 2. He stood on my porch with his hands tucked into his vest and asked me what would make me feel safe. "Not letting her inside," I said. He nodded. "We'll do it at the threshold." Raven came 5 minutes late, thinner somehow, without the cat. She had on a sweatshirt that said Santa Cruz in a font that felt like it belonged to a different life. She tried to step forward like muscle memory wanted to walk right in. The officer put a palm out and said, "We're doing this here." Her eyes flicked past him like she wanted to take inventory of my house with just her pupils. I kept my gaze on the doorframe just to the left of her shoulder because if I met her eyes I knew I'd get pulled into the undertow. She said she needed her work bag, then described my canvas tote with the paint-splattered bottom that has my name stitched into the inside seam. I told her I had already gathered all items that weren't clearly mine and bagged them and labeled them. She tried again with a different noun. Each thing she said having this wobble to it, like maybe if she pushed one word hard enough it would split open and the couch would be hers. The officer asked if she had a list. She did not. We slid the 2 bags onto the porch. She crouched and unknotted one like a kid on the floor on Christmas morning and rifled through, jabby quick, pulled out a sweater, and then a bottle of perfume that made the air go loud with its sweetness. "Where's my air fryer?" she asked, sharp. "On my counter," I said, steady. She opened her mouth the way a person does right before they say the exact wrong thing, then closed it again. The officer's presence hung in the air like a levee. She took the bags. She did not thank anyone. She did not bring a list. She did not cry. There was a black sedan idling 3 houses down with the visor lowered like it was noon in August instead of a gray winter afternoon. My camera got a sliver of Angelo's jaw when he leaned forward to look in the side mirror. The officer clocked it too. He stepped off the porch, took 3 easy strides down the walk, and lifted his hand shoulder high, a little 2-fingered wave that is only for people who should go. The sedan rolled away slow, then faster. The leasing company pinged my email while the officer was still writing his note in the corner of my porch. They'd attached my rate sheet and a line that said I could include cleaning and loss of use in my demand. I felt half of myself leave my body and go sit on the roof for a minute to stare at the sky like it was a painting. When I came back down into my bones, I rewrote my invoice with the actual math. I gave it a due date that is soon and not today. I sent it to the number that still says Raven in my phone even though I now know the name on her vet paperwork is a completely different thing. The vet had printed it on the receipt when she paid me back the boarding fee, right there under a logo of a smiling cartoon dog, because life is nothing if not absurd. I googled it just enough to see a public record and a middle initial and then I closed the tab because my therapist would be proud of me for not burrowing deeper. By dusk, the sheriff called to say Angelo had been served at a gas station. "You're good," the deputy said, which is not a legal term but might be my favorite sentence this week. My best friends came by with an upholstery cleaner they'd borrowed and flirted with the couch until the stains gave up and left. The suction made this satisfying slurp I can still hear if I close my eyes. My kid did his homework at the coffee table and leaned his hip into the cleaner's cord each time it tried to tangle around my feet like he was playing defense. Small, ordinary mercies. At 11:23 p.m., my porch camera caught a shadow. My heart did the ugly thing and then undid it when I saw it was my neighbor with the oak, holding a plunger like a night spear. He'd heard about the air tag and wanted to check my drains for those cheap drugstore cap cameras because his sister saw something on the news. We both laughed too long and too hard and then we unscrewed my sink trap together just in case, and there was nothing but the smell of old coffee and a single translucent noodle. He went home carrying his plunger like a flag. I slept that night in a row, top to bottom, without the kind of dream where my house is a maze and every door opens onto the same wrong room. This morning, a detective in plain clothes called about the unauthorized vehicle report, asked if he could swing by to take my statement while his coffee was still hot. He stood in my entry with a notepad the color of wet cardboard and a pen that clicked on the end like a little metronome. He told me the AirTag serial was useful, that sometimes they can get Apple to cough up an account with a subpoena. He used the word restitution and then he used the word paper trail, and I thought about how the world is built out of forms, really, and sometimes the forms save you. He asked me how I was sleeping. I told him the truth. He looked at my new keypad deadbolt and said, "That model's solid, the way you might compliment someone on good boots," and then he left with my copy of the toll photo and a thumb drive with those 3:12 a.m. clips. After lunch, my phone buzzed with a Venmo notification. $25. The note was a single peach emoji. It came from a username that was not either of their names. I stared at it until my eyes watered, Then I sent it back. I wrote, in the little memo line, no contact. Use the mailing address for any claims. My thumb didn't shake when I hit send. My leg doesn't love me for all these door trips, but it's starting to forgive me for making it carry me through. I lit a fire with my neighbor's oak. It took right away, the way dry wood does, a clean tongue flame with no smoke. The room warmed up in increments. The protective order is a thin sheaf of paper on my coffee table with my name typed correctly at the top, and it turns out the sight of that is its own kind of heat. I propped my stitches on a pillow and drank tea that tasted like actual tea and not adrenaline. The only siren I heard belonged to some other street, some other life. I watched the light move across my floorboards like a slow parade and, for the first time since I let Raven into my house, I did not imagine what might be hiding at the edges of the frame. I just sat, and the quiet held. Update 4. The courthouse smelled like old carpet and burnt coffee. I wore the only pants I own that don't pinch my stitches and a sweater that makes me feel like a person who knows where her wallet is. The metal detector chirped at my zipper and the deputy waved me through with a half smile that felt human. The courtroom was colder than it needed to be. My friend sat behind me and pressed a peppermint into my palm like a talisman. When the clerk called my case, I stood up on knees that remembered a different kind of standing at attention and said my name out loud. It didn't tremble on my tongue this time. Raven was there. She had on eyeliner thick enough to feel like armor and a hoodie with a college logo I don't think she actually attended. She kept looking at the ceiling like maybe there was a right answer written up there if she just found the angle. Angelo wasn't in the room, or if he was one of the heads bent over their own paper storms. The judge was a compact woman with hair the color of steel wool and that particular kindness some people carry that doesn't spill. She asked me what happened. I told her the simple version, the trespass at 2:38 a.m., the air tag we pulled up from under the car mat, the call to 911, the siren on my camera app, the way my hands shook around my phone like it was a bird I might drop. I said words like odometer and toll notice and footage because sometimes nouns do the heavy lifting better than adjectives. I kept my voice even and I used the phrase fear for my safety and I didn't feel stupid for saying it. Raven went second. She didn't look at me while she talked. She said she had nowhere to go, that she just wanted her cat, that none of this was about me. She said the air tag was for the boyfriend, not for her, like that cleared her of smoke when the room still smelled like fire. The judge held up a finger every time she drifted toward the story she wanted to tell and brought her back to the facts like you would a kite on a windy day. Did you leave an air tag in the petitioner's vehicle? Did you come to her residence after being told not to? Did you bring additional people to her home? Raven's mouth made soft shapes around the word no. The judge asked me if I wanted the order to cover my children and the car and the school and work. Yes. Yes, I did. The judge granted it for 2 years. She said no third-party contact, no deliveries, no messages through mutual friends as if she was reading the commandments off a tablet. I took the copies from the clerk and the paper felt heavier than it should, like it had weight beyond its grams. On the way down the courthouse steps my phone buzzed with a number I now recognize even though it still shows up as unknown. The detective with a wet cardboard notepad. Apple came back, he said without preamble, like we were picking up a sentence we'd set down on the counter. That air tag's paired to a device on a prepaid account. The email attached has Angelo's last name in it. We've requested the store footage from the day it was activated. More importantly, it confirms who set it up. That's good for a stalking charge. He said stalking like a diagnosis, not a headline. Also, he added, the click of his pen traveling through the line like a small metronome, your row is in the system now. Patrol's got it flagged. He told me he was filing with the DA. He told me these things with the calm of a person who has filed a lot of things and watched them matter. I stopped by the dealership after because the detective's voice had shaken loose a splinter of fear I could actually do something about. The service advisor was a guy with grease under his wedding band who talked about key fob programming like he was reading a bedtime story to a nervous child. He wiped my car's memory and paired 2 new fobs while I sat in a plastic chair with a little styrofoam cup of coffee and watched a looped ad about tire rotations. When he handed the fobs to me he said, any old keys won't work now. It sounded like the kind of sentence people cross-stitch if they're the sort who cross-stitch warnings. He printed me a receipt that said remote erase in a font with too many loops. I tucked it into the same folder as the toll notice and the service numbers. A paper trail long enough to trip someone who wasn't watching. That afternoon a package showed up on my porch addressed to a name I recognize as one of Raven's names but with my house under it. It was light, too light for any good thing. Inside was one of those dollar store pay-as-you-go phones still in its plastic, and a card with a number, scratched onto it in Sharpie. The return address said a gas station on the far side of town. I didn't touch the card with my alive hands. I slid the whole thing into a grocery bag with a spoon like it was biohazard and left a voicemail for the detective. He picked up on the second ring this time and said, don't power it on. Bring it in. The judge will like that. His voice made the words feel like bricks in a wall I get to keep. At 7:12 p.m., which is the worst time for the doorbell to ring because the part of your brain that knows almost nobody rings a doorbell for a nice reason after dark wakes up first. My camera showed a kid in a red windbreaker holding a paper bag from a burger place. He checked the order name, checked my address, and waited with all the wide-eyed earnestness of someone working for tip money. The slip said for the kids, in a handwriting that pretends to be 14. I opened the door just enough to talk and told him he had the wrong house. He insisted the app told him to take a picture of it on my stoop. I called the non-emergency line with the door locked between us and asked if a delivery paid for by Cash App from a number the detective told me to block counted as third-party contact. The dispatcher didn't even pause. Yes. The officer who showed up talked to the kid on my porch like none of this was his fault, because it wasn't, and then took a photo of the receipt because sometimes the proof looks like a crumpled grease-stained strip of thermal paper with a winky face. The small claims clerk emailed me a mediation date in a sentence with a too friendly exclamation point. 10 minutes later, a counteroffer landed in my inbox from an address with a floral domain that felt like it belonged to a knitting club, $50 and consider it square. The subject line was peace offering. There was a peach emoji in the body again and my throat made a sound that was not laughter exactly but shook some dust loose behind my nose. I typed exactly one sentence in reply and read it twice to make sure there was no sliver of apology hiding in there. No, thank you. See you at mediation. By 9, patrol called to say Angelo had been picked up on a traffic stop with a busted taillight and the protective order in his jacket pocket folded like a love letter. They used the phrase taken into custody like a comma instead of an exclamation point. He made a comment about just driving by, the officer said, deadpan. We reminded him that's the part that's the problem. There was the faint sound of a printer spitting paper in the background of the call. I pictured a room I'll never see with a machine that coughs out records that make strangers safer. My mother's car drove by while we were stacking wood earlier, same cracked bumper sticker, same impatient blinker, and I watched the tail lights blink into the distance and did not feel pulled like a tide. Not today. Each absence is its own kind of work. Inside, my kid practiced a Spanish presentation in the living room while the kittens tried to put their entire heads in my tea. The old fish flicked his fins in his quiet little universe like he didn't care about courtrooms or serial numbers, and I found myself jealous of the simple physics that keeps him moving forward. My neighbor knocked, not with a plunger this time, but with the empty jar my peach came in, washed and set on my railing like an offering to normalcy. He told me his sister had texted him to stop checking women's drains for cameras and he laughed so hard he wheezed a little and I laughed so hard I had to hold my belly to keep my stitches from scolding me. We stood there in the wedge of porch light and cold air and I realized the world is dotted with people who show up on your stoop with ridiculous kindness at exactly the right moment. When the house finally went soft around the edges, when the notification slowed to a manageable drizzle instead of a hailstorm, I took the big envelope with the row and slid it into a drawer I can reach without bending. The keypad made its shy little beep when I locked up for the night. My phone didn't make any sounds it wasn't supposed to. I built a small fire out of what's left of the oak, the pieces that fit the grate just so. The flames went up clean and the room warmed the way trust does, incrementally, then all at once. My leg ached, but in that honest way that says healing is happening whether I'm watching it or not. I set the phone face down. I didn't picture a hood up at the fence line. I didn't rehearse what I'd say to a dispatcher. I watched the light pull itself across the threadbare part of the rug and thought, with the uncomplicated certainty of a kid counting down to recess, tomorrow I'm going to make pancakes that are too thick and flip them too early and we're going to eat the ugly ones anyway with butter melting into every crater. And if the doorbell rings in the middle, I am allowed not to answer it.